Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating concept from our source material, planned devaluation in the ISLM model. We're going to track exactly how pulling just one single lever at a central bank triggers this massive, totally systematic chain reaction across an entire economy. It's literally like watching a machine come to life. So let's start with a kind of counterintuitive question. What exactly happens when a central bank steps in and intentionally weakens its own currency? I mean, at first glance, it sounds completely backward, right? Why on earth would you want to make your own money worth less? But, well, in the world of macroeconomics, this intentional devaluation is basically like tipping over the first domino in a perfectly arranged, highly elaborate sequence. Every single market reacts, one right after the other, and it drives the whole system toward a very specific and honestly highly impactful final outcome. Okay, but before we go tipping over any dominoes, we need to clearly establish the strict ground rules of the economic model we're exploring today. Think of this as our playing field. We are operating strictly under what's called a fixed exchange rate regime with perfect capital mobility. So what does that actually mean for us? Well, first, the exchange rate isn't just floating around out there. It's locked in place at a specific level by the central bank. We call this fixed rate E-bar. Second, capital is perfectly mobile. Money can flow instantly across international borders with absolutely zero restriction. Because of that, our capital mobility line, or BP, is equal to zero, and it is entirely dictated by the world interest rate. So let's map out our starting baseline. Imagine we're looking at a massive economic dashboard. On there, we have the goods market, which is represented by the IS curve sloping downward from left to right. Then we have the money market, represented by the LM curve, and that one slopes upward from left to right. Over in the foreign exchange market, our exchange rate is fixed firmly at that E-bar level. And slicing right horizontally through our entire model is that BP equals zero line, which rigidly locks us to the world interest rate. Right now, everything is in perfect, quiet equilibrium. Just waiting. But here comes the trigger event, the catalyst. Out of nowhere, the central bank initiates a planned, intentional devaluation. They step in and set a completely new, higher exchange rate. So we move from our original E up to a new level, let's call it E prime. And the very moment they set this new rate, boom, the gears of the economy start turning. The equilibrium is officially broken and our chain reaction begins. Let's walk through the very first sequence in this chain reaction. It's a clear cause and effect. Step 1, the currency is devalued. Now, because the local currency is suddenly cheaper for foreigners, step 2 happens almost instantly. Exports grow. Our goods are suddenly highly competitive abroad. So because exports are surging, step 3 naturally follows. Total economic output begins to rise. And as a direct result of all that newly generated output, that downward sloping IS curve is pushed out to the right, landing at a new position, IS1. Now, we need to pause and look really closely at what happens at this exact intermediate stage. Let's call it point B. Because our total output just jumped up, it actually creates upward pressure on the local interest rate. Suddenly, a massive gap opens up. We have a domestic interest rate that is absolutely spiked, but the world interest rate hasn't changed one bit. So we're left with this temporary but incredibly critical imbalance, where the local rate is sitting way, way higher than the global baseline. And this is exactly where the sheer gravity of perfect capital mobility takes over. Remember our rule from earlier, capital can move instantly. So when global investors out there see those high domestic interest rates, they want in. Capital flows inward at incredible speeds. Now combine this huge inward flood of investment capital with the fact that our exports just grow significantly. Both of these massive events are happening at the exact same time, which causes the supply of foreign currency in the domestic market to absolutely explode. So, with all this foreign cash flooding in, the central bank can't just sit back and watch. Because they're operating in a fixed exchange rate regime, their hands are basically tied. They are mathematically forced to act to maintain that new E prime rate they just set. To prevent the local currency from fluctuating, they literally have to absorb all that excess foreign cash. How? Well, the central bank buys the incoming foreign currency from the public, but to buy it, they have to hand over newly printed local currency in exchange. This means the domestic money supply grows. And as the total amount of money in the economy expands, our upward sloping LM curve is forced to shift to the right. Which brings us nicely to our final destination, point C, the new equilibrium. Let's take a second to appreciate the incredible journey our total economic output has taken here. We started all the way back at our baseline initial output, Y0. We briefly spiked through that intermediate stage at Y1 during the interest rate gap.
But now, because the money supply expanded and gently pushed local interest rates right back down to the world level, we settle at a much, much higher final output, Y2. The chain reaction is complete.
Okay, so we've tracked the mechanics. We've seen all the curves shift to the right. But how does this chain reaction actually look on paper? Like, if we were to generate a concrete, macro-level sources and uses report, basically tallying up the exact final receipts of the entire economy, what would it tell us? Let's transition away from the theory for a second and look at the pure accounting. Here is our final macroeconomic scoreboard, based right on our source material. Total output, Y, as we just saw, is definitively up. Government spending, G, well, that remained perfectly constant throughout this entire process. Investment, I, is also constant. Private consumption, C, has gone up. And finally, net exports, NX, which is just our exports minus our imports, is also up. It's a remarkably clean, positive results across the board. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the logic driving these final variables, like why is investment totally constant? Well, remember, under perfect capital mobility, the world rate ultimately dictates the final domestic rate. Since the interest rate ended up exactly where it started, investment didn't budge. Now, because total output grew, everyday people have more money in their pockets, so private consumption naturally grows. However, it doesn't grow by the full amount of the new output. Why? Because of what economists call the marginal propensity to consume. Basically, people tend to save a little bit of that new income rather than spending every single penny. So, if consumption goes up but doesn't quite cover the whole massive jump in total output, what fills that remaining mathematical gap? It's completely filled by that huge surplus we created in net exports. Oh, but wait, there is one more detail. An additional and honestly often overlooked side effect of this entire maneuver. The central bank's foreign exchange reserves actually grow. Remember, just a minute ago, when the central bank was forced to intervene, they had to buy up all that incoming foreign currency from the public just to maintain the fixed exchange rate. Well, all that foreign currency didn't just vanish into thin air, it went straight into the national vaults, leaving the central bank sitting on significantly larger foreign exchange reserves. Which brings us to this incredibly powerful concluding thought straight from our source material. Quote, devaluation in a fixed exchange rate regime with perfect capital mobility is good for output, private consumption, exports, and foreign exchange reserves. End quote. I mean, it is a rare theoretical scenario where manipulating just a single variable, intentionally weakening your own currency, fires off this flawless domino effect. It results in higher production, wealthier consumers, a booming export sector, and a richer central bank. It really makes you wonder, if the theoretical math is this flawlessly positive across the board, what stops every single country from pulling this lever right now? I'll let you think about that. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the mechanics behind the money.